In these hours of uncertainty, and I would say confusion given the terrible Vatican communication to which we have become accustomed in recent years, the Catholic world is waiting, and it is natural. We do not know if Pope Francis has been in palliative care for weeks. We do not know if it is a crisis of elderly people whose passage through the hospital when a clinical picture is shown, such as the one we are told, complex, implies getting used to the idea that the admission is going to be long. We are told that the Pope has slept well, that the Pope has breakfast, reads the newspaper and continues to work, even that he has gone to the chapel to pray and that he receives the Eucharist. That on Friday, the 28th in the afternoon, he had a severe bronchoasthmatic attack with aspiration of vomit included, and that it has been a sudden worsening. That tells us about a person who is bedridden, with little strength and hardly any mobility. Also, not spontaneously, rosaries have been organized in St. Peter's for the health of the Pope. Curious hours and days, which denote that evangelical simplicity where things were communicated with transparency, normality, and that the crossroads between life and death is the most natural thing for every believer, that simplicity in communication, I affirm, is conspicuous by its absence. As we will see in the historical series of this channel on the conclaves of the 20th century. In the past, it was announced just a few days in advance. As happened with Benedict XVI, the Pope is on his last legs. This is what happened with Pius X, with Benedict XV, and with John Paul I we were directly told, the Pope died of a heart attack this morning. Then, there was not the media and superficial bombardment that we suffer now. So, the Catholic world was more innocent, a noble and simple faith prevailed. We began to pray and that a good Pope would come to us. Whoever he is, we will love him. But those times died decades ago. Now within the Catholic world, if you wait for a trained Pope to be elected, a good shepherd, a saint, or one who decisively aspires to holiness, they tell you, you are naive, how unwary, your problem is that you have faith. Be deceived, everything is rigged. Now the cardinals will seek to reach an agreement and find someone of consensus. The consensus thing is sobering. Is it really true that all the cardinal electors are vulnerable men, weak in conscience and without radical love for the gospel? No, I don't believe it. And I keep asking myself, consensus, for what? To improve deteriorating relations with Israel? To continue to keep the agreements with China secret? To continue to maintain as bishops men who contradict Catholic doctrine? Or consensus, for what? To ardently call for the conversion of the world to Christ? To procure a reform in substance and form a la Trento? To bet on catechesis before a Catholic world, in large part, absolutely ignorant of the content of its faith? So that the statistics continue to say that the sacrament that is most celebrated by dioceses are funerals instead of baptisms, confessions, first communions, marriages, and priestly ordinations? A man of consensus to achieve absolute independence in funding from states that contradict the teachings of the gospel, for example, would be fine. Consensus can be as varied as people, but agreeing on the fundamentals, oh friend, that seems to be more difficult today. It is evident that the cardinals are looking for their candidates, and that is something natural, as history shows. The key may be that in the past, and I'm not going too far, let's say until after the middle of the 20th century, the cardinals, for the most part, were men who professed the Catholic faith to the letter, doctrine, magisterium, and tradition. But today it is not like that. Today there is a college of cardinals with lights and shadows, with hopes, uncertainties, and unease. A journalist recently asked me if it is not in bad taste when the Pope is in the hospital to start talking about papabilities. My answer has been clear, I would say forceful. It is in bad taste to put speculative headlines without rhyme or reason, and to lend oneself to the circus when the Catholic Church is supposed to pass through humanity to speak of the very newness that is the person of Christ and to present salvation as the guarantee against evil. But it is a responsibility and a duty to present the men who are going to vote in the next conclave, because although God works miracles, we cannot look the other way and stop seeing reality as it is. Among these men there are those who are authentically followers of Christ, imbued with faith, love for the Church and for humanity, but there are also men who disappoint by their UN Catholic postulates, their connivance with the world and their little or no inspiration to elevate the spirit. We even wonder if they really have faith. Of the 136 cardinal electors, there is a good group whose vote can be objectively doubted in the sense that they will be the ones who will be looking for the man of consensus. There is another group, of whom it is difficult for me to admit that they will lend themselves to consensus, whose vote will be reliable, perhaps wrong, but reliable because they will vote in conscience for the one they believe could be the best man, formed, shepherd and saint to steer the bark of Peter for the time that providence dictates. And then there is another group whose vote is difficult to clearly intuit. The truth is that the great absentee is God. It seems that God's intervention is no longer part of this Catholic world, as if the prayer of millions of people interceding for conversion and for renewing in holiness from the deepest evangelical roots to the Church were not heard by God. Less consensus and more prayer. The lack of faith produces charlatanism. To stop aspiring with order to a Catholic Church sacrament of salvation for humanity. In short, to stop believing that good is possible, because do not deceive yourself. Your problem is that you have too much faith. They will agree so that everything remains the same. Without ceasing to see the reality that evil is eager to continue to get its claws into the Catholic Church, that faith prevails, just because the beautiful, the good and the true is to believe that in the heart of the good God there is a name written to be the next vicar of Christ, and that yes, the Holy Spirit will be able to act more or less in the conclave if those men, with that tremendous responsibility, are accustomed to living with the Holy Spirit. Then they will be able to listen to God's inspiration, discern and vote, never better said, as God commands. See you next time.